Welcome to our webinar today, Advanced Educational Tools to Capture Employee Interest and Improve Training, presented by Rachel Chazen. With that, let's tell you a little bit about the technology today. Using GoToWebinar, you can slide the panel closed using the double arrow or orange arrow. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar. Inquiries can be made through the question box at the bottom of your chat panel. Don't click on the black X, please, because that would close out your session. In a Q&A session, we'll follow the webinar presentation. Please type your questions in as you're going along. We'll try to queue up the questions and get to as many as possible. With that, please allow me to introduce our guest speaker. Rachel is the Manager of Systems and eLearning at Teksoft, with responsible and oversight for all e-learning developed by our department and all tools used throughout the entire organization. With 20 years of experience in adult learning, Rachel also serves as a training project manager and lead SAP training developer. Over the years, Rachel has researched the subject of inserting entertainment or edutainment into the learning environment, classroom, virtual, or even self-paced. When she's not using the results of her research, she's discovered how to edutain in live and recorded classrooms. With that, Rachel, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alan. Welcome everyone to Advanced Educational Tools to Capture Employee Interest and Improve Training, also known as Edutainment. I'm very excited to be here with you today, but before we begin, I do want to mention that this presentation contains actual work product samples that use the tools that I'm going to talk about. And you may notice a little bit of gradient differences in graphics or movement of objects and possibly some audio sync issues. These are not the norm when we deliver using e-learning or classroom training. However, based on your internet connectivity and your screen resolution, you may experience a little bit of a technical difficulty here and there, but we don't anticipate anything major. So,
wait, what about me? Did you forget me? I thought I was going to present with you, Rachel.
Oh, Bob, you weren't forgotten. It's just not time for you to come on yet. Remember how we rehearsed yesterday? I'll do some of the talking and I'll introduce you when it's time.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I forgot. Sorry for the interruption, everyone. I will be back later in the program. Bye.
Well, that's my sort of co-presenter cohort in this, Bob. We'll see him later on, and you'll find out it's all about Bob. Well, over the years, getting back to the presentation, over the years, training has come a real long way, and we've seen the rise of long-distance learning through webinars, recorded classes, and even self-paced e-learning courses, while classroom training really still remains very popular. So we're constantly striving to improve training materials and learning retention. And we look to innovate and create new ways to present our classes. So over about a year ago, we started to look into this, and we dove into the world of edutainment, and we have not looked back. In today's program, I'm going to review some of the methods that we at Teksoft have applied to enhance our training. I'm sure most people are wondering, what is edutainment and why is it important? Excuse me. While edutainment itself is where learning and entertainment converge to engage learners as never before, really, by incorporating entertainment into e-learning and using entertainment in the classroom settings even, whether they be live or web-based. Edutainment even allows users to learn not just from the content and the instructor in a course, but from peripheral information such as avatars and video and even learning games. There are some things that edutainment isn't. It's not intended to distract learners. It's really important to find the right blend of items that will entertain while educating. We also don't want to frustrate learners. Learning games, for example, can be very challenging, but if they're complex and frustrating, the learning is impeded. And we don't want to use the same approach for every course. Don't create a template that always puts a video at slide 4 and a game after slide 8. It becomes mundane and redundant to the learners, and they no longer are interested in seeing the program. The objects and type of entertaining objects that are used really need to be varied throughout the course and even from course to course. There is an importance of edutainment in learning, and it stems from the brain's need for stimulation. In classroom settings, instructors usually ask questions to pique interest. They try to encourage and involve the learners in the learning process, and in order to provide interactivity, they do perform exercises or use role plays. In e-learning classes, we design them to have interactivity through hands-on participation. For example, the click here or type this there or roll over captions, something to keep the learner involved. So why not add something entertaining to the mix? The vast majority of learners today, we've all grown up with television as a main staple of our learning process. We've watched educational programs like Sesame Street, and we even use full-blown cable network choices, the History Channel and the Learning Channel. And now, we even use the Internet and smart devices as learning modalities. For courses and presentations, why not make them interesting when you have to use statistics or even process flows? Consider making them fun and interesting. This particular chart is an interactive chart. When I mouse over the objects, they actually seem to come to life. Now, this might not be the most entertaining piece in my entire presentation, but it certainly is more interactive the way the data is showcased. It makes me actually want to see what each of these objects are going to do. Chart automation can provide a view of the data that might otherwise be considered not as interesting to those who are not as interested in statistics. And it's effective in learning as well as standard meeting presentations too. Wouldn't something like this really impress your manager if you used this type of chart presentation in statistics for your next meeting? It's also great to use for process flows, and making that type of data interesting is going to make learners want to know the information. They're going to want to know what each of these items represent and actually absorb. So now I'd like to take a look at some cool new tools and how they can capture employee interest and improve training. There are lots of tools available today. In fact, there are so many that it boggles your mind. We at Teksoft really did some research, and we played with all the different types of tools we could find. And yes, we did have fun doing it. Having fun on the job as well as in your learning is always important. From the variety of tools that we tested, we chose a really nice package of items that can be used in a multitude of ways in various types of classes and presentations, using even various delivery mechanisms. The first tool I'd like to talk about is our Code Baby tool. Hey, Bob, it's time for you. Are you ready? Bob.
Oh, hi everyone. I was just finishing up a very important meeting. Anyway, I'm Bob, a character from the Code Baby suite. I am sure you find me quite entertaining, which is what my creators intended. As Rachel said, I can be used to engage learners throughout a training course and establish an emotional connection to the materials, especially when used in online training.
Now, as you may have guessed, a program like the one Bob lives in that includes fully automated and expressive digital characters can be a bit more costly, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. Thanks for your help, Bob.
You're welcome. So long, everyone.
Movies with human actors can infuse your learning with interaction and visual demonstrations.
Humans.
Oh, that Bob, he always wants the last word in everything. When we have movies in our video or video in our learning, we're able to connect the users with the material, and they tend to help understand concepts more rapidly. When we use video in training courses, it can really be a powerful way to meet the learning objectives. there is a cost associated, of course, with this sort of method. So if you think about producing content that's not time sensitive, it'll help make video a reusable tool. Now, making things relevant is also important. So the video has to be pertinent to just about every subject that you're going to teach. And you can find a lot of video, even content, without having to produce it online. Locating videos on YouTube can really enhance your content and add variety, levity, and even some fun to your presentations and courses. Now, if you're on a tight budget, 3D animated video is a really good way to rapidly produce an engaging and very memorable training experience in a course. There are lots of free and inexpensive and easy-to-use programs available to create animation. Many of them even allow for you to choose text-to-speech or using human audio within them. When you create a really strong storyline in your movies that are relevant to the course and you use dialogue between characters regarding the subjects, you can really keep users interested and they get to be eager to learn more about the subject. Now, I know a lot of people might be concerned about the acceptance or the use of animation, whether it be in a course or even in any kind of class. And I'd like to tell you a little story. Recently, we developed a series of courses containing animated movies for a Fortune 50 client. And these courses were accessed by over 10,000 users. Now, the statistics for this client for non-compliance-related e-learning courses were typical registration and completion of about 25 to 35%, depending on the subject. When we rolled out these courses with the movies, as soon as people started seeing them and passing the word, participation zoomed to over 75%. Now, you're probably even familiar with some of the Geico nationwide advertising campaigns. There's one that used the same extra normal program, and the entire premise of the ad points out that it's really easy to use animated cartoons. Now, educational gaming is another great way to elicit interest in the course material. Games motivate us. They give us rewards when we succeed, and they let us try again when we fail. Well, most of them do anyhow, and you can design them however you need to. Motivated learners are going to pay a lot closer attention, which is going to improve their retention and therefore improve their real-world performance. The example that I have on screen is a game that actually requires me to have paid a lot of attention in the course in order to succeed. And I could use it as an exercise within the course, or I can even use it as a graded assessment of my knowledge level or the knowledge level of the users. Now I'm going to play this game a bit, and the object in this case is for me to move all these little deals into the right box. And if I put them in the wrong box, it snaps back. And as I do that, you can see the little guy on the right, he's actually climbing up the corporate ladder. Now, he doesn't fall down a peg when I miss, but he's sure not going to go any further if I don't get it right. And I'll tell you now, I'm not really trying to make mistakes here, and until I get this right, we are not moving on because I should know this stuff. And once I succeed, he goes all the way to the top and he comes back. And yeah, he resembles Bob just a little bit, but I think it's his cousin, Jebediah. Flash games can be customized to the course as well as the experience level of the users. And in this case, we've branded it for our organization. You really need an experienced Flash developer for this type of tool, but there's a lot of simple tools available out there, and companies can use in-house resources for this sort of animation. Flash animation is another way to attract attention to your presentation materials and enhance the learning experience. As you can see, these items came onto the screen and made me more interested to see what is the connection, where do the connections go, versus a flat slide that may not have had as much contact. There are hundreds of learning tools that assist developers with the creation of Flash animation, but there really are some common tools out there that you've probably heard of, even Adobe Captivate, Articulate Presenter, even the original Adobe Flash. Now, audio is a great way to attract and keep attention. Scripted audio needs to have vocal variation. It needs to have inflection and tone and sound realistic. And you can even include anecdotal humor and stories to be able to get your point across when you're talking. Instruct with audio as you would instruct in a classroom setting. Now, some people have better voices for recorded audio than others, so keep that in mind when making the decision to add audio to a class. So now we have an idea of some of the cool tools that we use. Now, how are we going to fit all of these tools and these cool things into classes? Well, some of the importance of fitting things in is the right placement. Be sure to match your objects for the subject and the audience. That is key. Most of the items that are considered entertaining are also passive forms of entertainment, passive forms of learning. So it's really important to match the right subject with the course content and put them in the right place. Inserting something entertaining that doesn't relate well to the subject or audience just defeats the purpose. You know, this globe is a really great object, but other than the fact that it's an object and that's the subject of today's course, the cool tools, it really does not have any bearing on my subject. So I need to pick things that are relevant. Overuse of objects can also hurt your class as well. The point of the class is to teach the content, and media objects can be distracting, especially to some people. So if there are too many of them, it becomes overload. The idea of edutainment is to spark the interest and attention and retain that attention, and the instructor and the content really still need to be the stars of the show. Timing is everything. Animation and even games can be too long in duration to hold participant attention. It's really important to find the right blend for the audience and for the subject. Speaking of the audience, it's very important to know your audience. It's key in any type of course development, regardless of the type of class that's being presented. It's important to know when an audience might not respond to media objects in a learning environment. And although everyone likes to have fun and be entertained, it's very important to choose media objects that really can suit the entire audience. So don't discriminate, but when using edutainment, consider things like demographics, age, language skills, and computer literacy, and try not to detract from the learning. Regardless of the way your class is being presented, there are some really important delivery items to also be considered. The method of delivery has to fit the technology. Large files might need to be broken down into smaller segments so they run efficiently. Using streaming videos might need to be used as well, so be sure to test your course out using the method of delivery as well. Skill is an issue. Learner skill level and computer proficiency is really a factor in what you use. Learning won't be any fun if the objects in a course are over the skill level of the participant. Making sure that you're familiar with the technology is also critical. It's going to take you an additional amount of time to develop courseware with objects, but when you need to get up to speed on how they're developed in that new tool, it also is going to be something you need to consider. And you need to be able to troubleshoot issues as they occur, so you do need to become familiar with how the tool works. Audio can be extremely challenging. If you're in a classroom environment and you're using cool tools and audio objects in your presentation, it's really important to make sure that you can be heard in the farthest seat from the source. So your speakers need to be able to be heard at the back of the room. You might need to add additional speakers to the room. If it's a larger space, you might need to find a different space, more of an auditorium setting where you actually have that audio control. If you're using virtual training like a web conferencing tool like we're using today, you do need to test the audio in your content to make sure it can be clearly heard through your speakers as well as the speakers and the telephone of the people who are participating. For recorded audio, some tips are to use a good quality microphone and a headset to get the best possible output. Recording in a quiet place where echoes and outside noises are at a minimum is also a very important point. And be sure to listen to your recording carefully and edit out items like breaths, pops, and other strange sounds. It's really amazing once you start recording your own voice to hear all the crazy things and noises that your mouth really makes when you speak. Whether you're teaching in a live classroom over the internet, via webinar, or creating reusable e-learning classes, Edutainment is really a great tool to enhance the content, to engage your audiences, to encourage interaction, and to provide a fun way to learn. At this point, I'd like to thank Code Baby Guy Bob for helping me out.
Get rid of me that easy. After all, I am the star of this presentation, but I do have better things to do with my time than spend all day with you people. So I'm going to get back to my very busy and very important life. So long.
Well, I'm sure Bob thinks again that he has the last word, but I would like to leave you with a little quote before we do our Q&A session. As the Walt Disney Company once put it, I would rather entertain and hope that people learned something than educate people and hope they were entertained. Now, we have a few minutes for questions, and I know that we do have a couple in the queue. Alan, can you help me out with those today?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. The contact information is below. If you want a copy of the slide presentation today, please email Gary. His information is noted below. You can also go to the TeksoftVentures.com website. Now, with that, several questions have come in. We're very sensitive to keeping these educational webinars short and succinct, and you can look for another Teksoft webinar next month. The first question that came in has to do with the tools. They asked, how can we incorporate these types of tools into existing learning programs?
Oh, what a great question. You know, there are so many types of learning programs that these tools can benefit. The best way to determine how to incorporate entertainment and edutainment into learning would really be to perform a complete assessment of the learning programs to help figure out which programs it would work best in and who the audience is. But, you know, we're here to help, and so you can always contact us for more information on assessing the needs or even suggestions.
Very good. Second question, how long does it take to create a Bob-like interaction?
Ooh. Well, you know, the way we use Bob today is not your typical interaction and use of the program. It took a little bit longer to create than the type of interaction that Bob and I had than, say, a standard character who'd play an instructor in an e-learning course or put on a little movie for us. And there are so many characters to choose from in that program and ways that you can even customize them. We even have an entire suite of medical characters that can actually perform some interesting functions. There are different scenes that can be used. So it really depends on the usage of those characters. Although Bob's program, Code Baby, doesn't really require any kind of flash programming knowledge, there's still some complexities that are really dependent on understanding that software and preparation. And again, you know, we can help when it comes to creating interactive characters for even meetings, classroom training, etc.
There's several questions that came in regarding YouTube. Essentially, they're asking what the regulations are for using YouTube videos within training programs.
Good questions as well. Now, as far as rule of thumb goes, usually your own content obviously is going to be something that you have copywritten. However, most of what's on YouTube is considered public domain, and if it is viewed publicly, it usually can be used. Now, you'd want to for sure check with, you know, you can check with us and we can give you some additional information on it, or even check with your own legal department as to how you're using the course and how you are using that video as to whether it actually is any kind of violation.
Is Extra Normal a free tool?
Yes. Extra Normal is a free tool. It's extranormal.com. It's not the most complex tool on the market, so it's fairly easy to use. There is a pay program that is much more enhanced. It's called State, and it's all part of that extra normal suite, so you can use it in multiple ways. I know we generally will use State, but extra normal is like the parent company.
There were a few questions regarding this. I'll try to paraphrase. There are many tools on the market. How have you determined which are best? How have you picked your tools?
Oh boy, there are so many factors that need to be considered when selecting tools, like the skill level of the developers, the time you need to go to market, even if it can be used in the type of courseware delivery mechanisms that you have. So courseware itself, even your budget is really an important consideration. So it's really a factor of honing in on everything that affects projects and researching the tools based on your expected outcome and how you want those things to be delivered. You know, we've looked at so many of these tools and tested dozens of the tools that are out there that we came up with the package that we use, and you know, we're happy to be of assistance with getting a tool package together or using the tools.
Well, thank you, Rachel. We are there's many questions still left. We'd encourage you to reach out to Gary or TeksoftVentures.com if you have specific information or additional questions that you'd like to ask. We'll close in keeping all of these educational webinars very succinct by thanking Rachel for a great presentation. And with a comment that came in from the audience, you have just demonstrated that you can provide useful information in a half an hour. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Rachel, thank you. And for everyone, this web seminar is now ending. We want you to have a great day.